And welcome back to Taxation is Theft, the show that talks about all the ways the government is ripping you off and what you can do to stop them. Broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube from an underground bunker deep within the jungles of Mexico, I'm Dan Taxationist Theft Berman, former candidate for president of the United States, currently in the race for governor of Texas. And apparently that turned me into a drug smuggler, smuggling some insulin across the border. Go check that story out at danforfreedom.com. Today, I have Connor Dragotis. He's a director of strategic partnerships at Americans for Fair Treatment. And he's going to tell us all about how unions are taking advantage of workers they claim to represent, specifically in the public sector. He's got a website up at americansforfairtreatment.org. Go check that out. But of course, before we get started, if you're watching the live stream, please make sure to like, share, and comment. Ask your questions. Give us some feedback. Tell us what you want to know. And tonight's episode is brought to you by Nugg of Knowledge, indoor-grown, chemical-free, smokable hemp flower and Delta-8 vape cartridges. Delta-8 THC. It's THC that's legal in all 50 states. Imagine that. Get elevated at nuggofknowledge.com. And now, on to the show. Connor, welcome back. It's been so long.
Happy Monday. How you doing?
Yeah. Oh, so apparently I am having a case of the Mondays. Or Groundhog's Day. I don't know. So we actually just started the show, and I want to say effed up, but apparently someone told me not to say the F word in the first 3 minutes of the show because that hits the YouTube algorithms. So I'll say it later on. But I effed up, and we were sitting here talking, thinking we were online, and we weren't. So we're gonna go back to talking about unions. First, let's go back again. I think let's start with an introduction of you and your history with how you got into this and what's your relationship with these unions and how do you know so much about the inner workings of the government's corrupt union system?
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a little bit of a thing. I know you and I have talked before about finding purpose-driven work. Last time I was here, and it's really important to be doing something that makes a difference. And that's really what I found in this area. I spent the last 3 years working for a law firm that offered free legal help to those who are hurt by public sector union officials. And starting at the beginning of February, I got the chance to jump over to Americans for Fair Treatment and take over as the director of strategic partnerships to actually be able to share a little bit more and offer even more education and help in a little bit of a different way to folks who are out there and might have questions about their rights as public sector employees. So Americans for Fair Treatment, really simple. What we do is educate people, specifically public sector employees, about their First Amendment rights. And we help people move from a position of what we're going to call union dependence to a position of union independence. And what we'd say is, if you would like to be part of a public sector union, if that is something that is best for you and your family and it's what you want to do, more power to you. But we absolutely demand that those on the other side who don't want to be part of a union also have their rights respected.
Right. And so it's interesting that you say that this is a First Amendment issue, because it's like that a First Amendment issue sounds to me like, when they say, you're a member of the Army and you're not allowed to post something on your Facebook that says, something bad about the military. That's what a First Amendment issue sounds like to me, but there's something completely different going on here. Can you explain that to us?
Well, it's such an interesting thing in that, I'm actually think that there are some really unique comparisons that are similar. And that is that when people waive their rights, that's one thing, but to have your rights forcibly taken away is something else entirely. And maybe the best way to kind of get at what kind of rights are being taken away or what rights have been taken away is to go back to a Supreme Court case in 2018 called Janus versus Afscme. And just to summarize before I get into the background, what that case said is that you cannot be compelled to pay a union as a condition of employment. And unfortunately, that's something that public employees, teachers, nurses, firefighters, anyone who is in a role as a public servant, oftentimes they don't know. So would it be helpful, I guess, for me to kind of go through the before and the after of this case to help flesh this out?
Yeah.
Okay. So back before this case went to the Supreme Court, there was a guy, Mark Janus. He's a grandfatherly type of guy, and he was a child support specialist for the state of Illinois. And he ran into a little bit of an odd situation where he wasn't a union member. He had resigned his union membership, but the union was continuing to deduct fees from his pay. So Mark didn't have a choice about whether he paid the union or not. He had to pay these fees if he wanted to have a job, even though he did not support the union, their politics, their decisions. In fact, in this case, Mark had a really unique argument. His union was arguing for raises. They were at the bargaining table. They were saying, hey, we want to increase wages by X amount. And Mark said, that's actually not what's best for my community. My neighbors, my family, people that I care about are financially hurting right now. And why would I want my union to bargain for higher wages if it's going to have a negative impact on the people who I care about? And that was an argument he made all the way up to the Supreme Court. He said public sector unions are different than private sector unions because there's a difference in the nature of who pays for public work. The action being taken by public sector unions, whether lobbying or doing things at the state house or negotiating even at the bargaining table, it is all inherently political. So if that's the case, how could the government force a public employee to pay for political activity they disagree with? And luckily, the Supreme Court agreed. They said, absolutely, that is right. You shouldn't have to pay these fees. So now the reality, what we call Janus rights, is that public employees do not have to pay money to a union as a condition of employment. And now we're in a whole new world of legal fights. But what Mark did really opened the door for a lot of people to get access to rights that they had. This is a First Amendment question, and it's so important that teachers and other public employees understand their rights when they go into these kind of jobs.
Yeah, and it's interesting because whenever you look at, like what comes out of your paycheck, because I'm always doing this with taxes, right?
Yep.
Because people are like, oh, yeah, they're taking money out of my taxes, but the government's giving me some sort of financial aid over here. How much are they paying? Like, how much would a teacher pay to a union? Because I'm sitting here wondering, like, if this guy just doesn't want to pay the union, he'd be basically getting a raise anyways. Is that, right? How much of a raise were they trying to get him?
Yeah. So the raise is I'm actually not sure what the number was that the union was bargaining for, but let's say it was even $1 per person per hour, right? All of a sudden you multiply that out by potentially thousands of employees, it really starts to add up. On the other side of this too, I think one of the things that, and maybe this is what you were asking in another way, is the unions are taking out $700, $1,000 a year, sometimes more. It depends on the contract, out of these employees' paychecks. So all of this money is going into union coffers, and much of it doesn't even stay local. Only a small percentage stays locally and goes to bargaining activity like negotiating or other things. The rest of it goes to political activity or gets shipped out to national or state level unions that they go and they use it for all manner of things that may be disagreeable to some public sector employees.
Right. I'm wondering also, we talked to kind of about, well, okay, I want to bring this up because I think this was an important point, where, so you have an organization that fights for people's rights. Yeah. What kind of fighting do they need? Why don't they just say, I don't want to be a member of the union? And I think this is something that government does really well in so many, I talk about the traffic court system all the time. And, you have all these rights. It's still a free country. You have all these rights, but if you don't know what those rights are, or even specifically how to opt out of some program that, if you don't say the magic words, I don't want any part of that, you're assumed to be a part of it and you're forced to pay for it and all these other things. And it sounds kind of like this is one of the big fights that you're fighting, is people who just, oh, well, you know, they told me, oh, you have to sign this paper when I got the job, and I had no idea what I was signing, but they told me I had to sign it. So I guess I'm a member of the union, and I was never given an actual, like, do you want to join the union?
Yep.
Here's what's in it for you.
Yeah. So public sector unions have done a few really interesting things. One of them is that in many cases, they have negotiated to have exclusive orientation access. So when someone starts a job working in a government position, they get to go in and behind closed doors have an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, depends on the contract, to go in and talk about the benefits of union membership. Now, that alone raises some questions about why a private organization is getting special treatment to go in and talk about their programs, while other organizations, Union Alternatives, for example, are not allowed in those rooms and are not given the ability to do that. But it's also what's going on in those rooms that is really worth talking about. And public employees need to know what they're getting themselves into. And unfortunately, the folks who are in the room, which are the union officials whose job it is to sell union membership, are, spoiler alert, not always forthcoming about what those rights are. And I want to tell you about a guy named John Cabler. So I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm sitting in Pennsylvania right now. And in this state, what we have is a state-controlled liquor store system. So all of our liquor stores are run by the government. And that means that their employees are public sector employees, they're government employees. Wow. John Cabler, really nice guy. He went in, he was really excited to get this job, right? Pays pretty well, gets to work in an area that he enjoys. And he walks into this orientation, and the person running the orientation says, if you do not join the union, you will lose your job. You cannot work here unless you join the union. And John, because, you know, nice guy, he's excited. He says, man, well, I'm actually not super interested, but I want the job, so I'm going to sign this piece of paper. Come to find out, a few months later, he learns that he did not actually need to join the union. He finds out that he was misled, if not lied to, and he decided to bring a lawsuit. Right. And luckily, he got what he needed out of that. The union, in some bizarre choice, had actually written that down on a piece of paper that you had to join the union or lose your job, which was not true. So the evidence was really against the union in that case. But this is happening all the time. John is one of those guys who is going to put his foot down. He did his research. He found out about the Janus decision. He said, no, I know for a fact I do not have to join the union and pay them money as a condition of employment. And the real worry is that there are a lot of people out there who never ask that question or just take it at face value. And all of a sudden there's an organization that they don't need, they don't want. In fact, they may actively disagree with that is taking money out of their paycheck against their will and to the detriment of the employee. And that's a shame. And that's part of why we exist, is to help provide that education, empower employees to do what's right for them and for their families, and provide a community of other folks that they can be around if they decide to take that step away and disaffiliate from union membership.
This is, I mean, it's shocking to hear that story, but at the same time, it's not, because like you hear this thing everywhere. I mean, everything from, you know, I always talk about the traffic courts, and I could tell you a million times where they told me I have to do something and I just absolutely refused, and surprise, I didn't have to. All these, this is a tactic that police use. Well, you can let me search your car, or we can do it the hard way, and I'm going to search your car anyway, but if you give me permission, then it'll make things easy. And it's like, no, you don't have to give them permission. And if they're asking for permission, they probably don't have enough probable cause to do a search without your permission. That's why they're asking. As one of my friends put it one time, you know, if they're asking for your signature and they tell you you have to sign, you probably don't have to sign, because if you had to sign, they wouldn't need your signature. But this is like, it's a manipulation tactic that for some reason we've become so easily manipulated that all someone has to do is say, oh, you have to. And then it's like, oh, well, I guess I have to. Like,
right.
And it's also interesting that you pointed out that this union had written down somewhere that you have to, because you're absolutely right. That screwed him, because if they didn't write that down, he would have been in court saying, "Oh, they told me I had to," and they would have been like, "Oh no, we always make sure that everybody knows it's optional." And it would have been their word versus theirs, and the shadow of a doubt kind of thing going on, and surprise, surprise, they win the lawsuit. It's really, really a shame, and people, it sucks, but this is, we could say it's part of the public education system, which how much of that curriculum is controlled by unions? Tell me.
That's
it's probably like a different union or something, but
yeah, there's a lot of things there. There's a really great book called Power Grab by Gregory Moo, which kind of goes into the history of the National Education Association and teachers unions going back into the late 1800s. That kind of goes through some of their goals and how they have attempted to build an education system that benefits the union, which is definitely worth a read. But one thing I want to make sure that I say here too is that there is a difference between public sector unions and private sector unions, right? So, all right, I'm seeing this comment pop up, right? Especially where if they contract with the employer to withhold benefits, they can only get benefits from union membership. So there are different things happening here between public and private, right? So in the private sector, one of the things that happens is there's only so much money, right? If the union asks for too much, you could drive a company out of business. And then all of those jobs are gone. And that's just not going to fly. What's happening, I guess I describe that as a really healthy butting of heads, right? There's disagreement of interest, and that means they both have to come to the bargaining table and they have to figure out real solutions. What happens in the public sector, however, right, the other side of this line that we're drawing, is that they are funded by taxpayer money. And in many cases, unions have funded the campaigns of the very people that they're negotiating against. So there's a great book called by Dan DeSalvo called Government Against Itself. And I want to give him credit for that phrase because I use it all the time. And putting government against itself means that when the union sits down, they're talking to someone who has an incentive to not act in the best interest of the people who are footing the bill, because their reelection may, in fact, depend on their ability to get a union's endorsement and union money. And what we're talking about here is not chump change. I have these numbers up in front of me here. The National Education Association in 2019 and 2020 spent $33.6 million on political activity. And I will tell you, just so we understand the division here, 118,000 of that 33.6 million went to Republicans. The rest went to the left. This is an organization that is certainly donating in one way. And one of the things that I want to make sure everyone listening understands and watching understands is that for members of these unions, folks who are footing the bill for all this stuff, it's much closer to 50-50. And that makes a very big difference when it comes down to whether or not this money is being used in an appropriate way. And that's why another reason why it's so important that people have the ability to opt out if they would like to, is to withhold their consent, or rather remove their consent to have this money taken, so their speech is not being co-opted and their First Amendment rights are not being violated.
Is that are these people typically aware that that's how their money is being spent, or are they just like, yeah, go union, fight for my raise?
Right. That's a really good question. I'd say the data shows that right around 50% of union members are even aware of their rights to opt out. So there's kind of this interesting disassociation, right, between what people think a union is doing and what the union is actually doing. And again, I don't begrudge anyone for wanting to be part of a union that is serving their best interests. That's fantastic, and it's a really important thing that we have, right? This idea of voluntary association and coming together to build great things. But the thing about association and the opposite side of this, we have the right to associate. We also have the right to disassociate. and that needs to be taken care of. And right now, unfortunately, teachers and firefighters and nurses and public employees are having to fight tooth and nail to opt out of unions. And that's another thing that we do is we actually will help folks follow these crazy steps and do what they need to do to get out of the union if that's the step that they want to take.
So it's like canceling a gym membership. You have to go in and give a DNA sample and like
that is a perfect examination, right? Yeah, imagine you were going to the gym and with the gym membership, and some of them are like this, right? They say you can only resign, and this is in the public sector. In these contracts, a lot of what it's called is maintenance of membership, and what they say is you can only resign in the last 15 days of a contract. So one 15-day window every 3 to 5 years that you can actually opt out. And that's starting to change. We've seen a lot of unions, once they've been challenged in court on this provision, seen them remove it from their contracts, or at the very least, they will write a check and give public employees money back that was taken inappropriately. But unfortunately, those contract provisions still exist. And that's something that we look at. We keep a library of contracts for our experts to go through and point out, yep, here's what the language says. Here's how we can help you get out if that's the path you decide to take.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think that is like a perfect analogy, because I'm thinking, like, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about like any time I've had to cancel a gym membership, and like, oh, you can't cancel it here. You have to send a letter to, like all this shit. And then like, oh, we didn't get the letter. And,
yeah,
it is absolutely crazy. And it's, I mean, I guess some people think like this, right? Some people think like, oh, this is just how we do business, and this is how we retain membership, and we make sure the checks keep coming in. And it's pretty shady. I mean, that's really interesting.
Can I share one example actually real quick here?
Yeah.
Just a really shady behavior that we just came across recently. There's a blog post about this on our website that you should check out. But the Pennsylvania State Education Association, so very large teachers union associated with the largest teachers union and the most politically active, the National Education Association, we had been helping people opt out and mailing letters to the address. And we found out after a couple letters were returned that they had changed their mailing address where you would send your resignation paperwork, and they had never updated it on their website. To my knowledge, right now, our blog post on our website is the only place that actually tells you, here's where you have to send your letter if you want to opt out, which is wild. It's absolutely wild. But that's why we exist, I guess, is to help these people out.
That is so ridiculous. So this is like, okay. I feel like the story is totally unrelated, but it's still kind of related. I used to work for this guy who ran this scam with toner. And I wasn't working the toner scam. I was actually building websites for like some side business he was in. But it really fascinated me, like this, because it was kind of brilliant, right? I was like, hey, this would be like a great like bank job movie or something, right? That's how brilliant this was. But like at the same time is, he's ripping people off, but I was young. I was like, I don't really care. I was just kind of fascinated by this. Right. And
your
I don't know.
Along the way. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because we all look at like bank robber movies and like, these great scam movies. And it's like, you're always rooting for the bad guy, hoping he gets away with the cash and that kind of stuff. But it's like in the real world, okay, things are a little bit different. But what was interesting is this was the scam. He'd have somebody call up and say, hey, we're calling from the, copy service company, and we're sending somebody out. We just want to make sure that we send out the right guy. So can you tell us the model number of your printer? And a lot of the businesses or organizations that he would call were like public sector schools and like, big organizations that really didn't keep track of this stuff that well. So he'd get the copier like model number, and then he'd just ship them a bunch of toner and charge them like 10 times, 20 times what the actual toner costs with a bill. And it would just be like half of them would pay, half of them would send it back. And the stuff he got back, he would send it to somebody else. It was a fascinating scam. It was a scam, but but that also kind of shows that like this is it's still the same sort of ignorance, right? Like when a box comes to your house, I remember they did this. Someone tried to do this to my grandfather. They sent him like this Amish made like fireplace or something. I don't like, and so they sent it to him, and then they started sending him bills for it. And he's like, "What the hell is this? I never asked for it. I never wanted it. Come back here and pick it up. I'm not paying for it." But had he been like, I don't know, and he was already older. He was actually like, this was probably a few years before he started slipping into dementia. They could have just totally got him like, "Oh, I don't know what this is, but I guess I must have ordered it. I guess I have to pay for it. I don't want to pay to ship it back." I was like, this is the kind of stuff that goes through people's heads. And you hear about like all these scams all the time. Like, like, "Oh, I got an email from a Nigerian prince." And we're like, who's going to fall for that? The reality is somebody does, or they wouldn't be sending these emails out. It's ridiculous. And it's the same kind of thing. And like, I don't know. I feel like this is something that is, when we talk about like real world skills that we should be learning as human beings, should be to recognize scams, whether it's, somebody sending us stuff and trying to get us to pay for it, or forcing us to join things, or not telling us about our rights and coercing us into like all these programs, and then using all kinds of manipulative tactics to make us think we have to keep paying. This is something that we should be, I mean, not that I'm going to advocate public education, but like, or any education, wherever you're going to learn, this is something that we should be taught. I think this is like, it's not math, right? It's not science. It's not history or anything like that. It's an actual skill that is, it's a self-defense skill to some degree, not against physical violence, but against manipulation and coercion. And we don't, that's not a thing. There's not a class, like they even have self-defense classes, but they don't have like self-defense against like mind games or manipulation or scams or anything. I think that's really fascinating. I don't know. Maybe somebody watching this show, come up with a new private sector program to teach this.
Well, it's getting so complicated too. I mean, these situations crop up, and we want to be able to trust the people who are entrusted. In the case of unions, unions are supposed to be representing these people, and so you want, inherently they're put in a position of power, and you would like to think, all right, then we should actually be able to rely on them. And one of the things that's happening, and I guess this gets back to kind of the incentives, right? Like in a scam like that, your grandfather could say, "Hey, I'm not giving you any money, and I'm not going to support you." And they have to take it, and they have to go somewhere else with what they're doing. What's happening with public sector unions is, even if you've secured your Janus rights, you've opted out of the union, you no longer have to pay them money. Public sector unions have something called exclusive representation. And that means, let's say in the case of teachers, what happens is you resign, you don't pay, but the teachers union is still the one at the bargaining table, bargaining for your benefits, for your pay, for all of these other things that they work into the contract. So where's the incentive to change? They're going to continue to take in money because, again, if those folks were taking money from your grandfather, and every single time they came back, he was still giving up a portion of the paycheck, or at least they had power over him in some way in a negotiating situation. Where's the incentive to leave? Where's the incentive to act better? And the only way to do that really is to continue to increase this education. And no one else can do this except public employees, right? I mean, there's options in the courts, but at some point, a teacher or a public employee has to put their foot down and say, "This isn't right. I'm going to do something about it." And we're very lucky at AFFT that our community of current and former public sector employees is just filled with wonderful people who have taken that step and recognized that, darn it, we're going to do something about it. And I just have so much respect for that mentality and that courage to do it. It takes something special, and they really do something great when they set forward that example for others to follow.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think that's amazing that you're talking to people. I mean, this is, I think there's a lot of people out there who they want to do that to some degree. I mean, even, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to say, even flat earthers think that's what they're doing, right? They're out
Right.
there trying to save everybody by telling us the truth about the shape of the planet. There is a lot of that, but some of these things are so obscure that it's not common knowledge, right? Like, here's an example. When you get a traffic ticket, everybody knows, or at least this used to be the thing, right? Oh yeah, you go to court and you just fight it, and if the cop doesn't show up, then you win. And that used to be a thing that happened frequently. But now they have like this really great scheduling system where they know, like, okay, the cops are going to be working these certain days, and they schedule all those tickets on those days, so it works out perfectly. And the cop is always there now.
Yep.
Because they learned that people were like trying to, they weren't really trying to fight it. They were just trying to get the cop to not show up. But it's like, it became common knowledge. And so people would share it with each other. And, because it was something, everybody's like, I don't want to pay this traffic ticket, that sort of thing. And so there was kind of like an incentive for, this little piece of information to go viral, which is exactly what happened. But now you have something like, the teacher union information about like, oh, you don't, or any public sector job union, you don't have to be a member. But that little piece of information doesn't affect everybody. It's a smaller group. So like all of the, I guess if you compare the algorithm of things going viral, all of those components aren't necessarily there. So this information just doesn't penetrate society that way. That's probably a poor choice of words. But here you are taking this information directly to the people who absolutely directly need it, because they're basically blindly becoming the victims of a scam. Yeah. And I think that's super, super, super important. This is really great work. Especially when I want to say, especially when these things that are happening are related to government, because of my, anti-government leanings. But I think it's also really important for people to recognize the same kind of things with private sector. But I think it's with government, it's like you said, there's that like belief in authority, like, oh, this is an authority person. This, like, even if it's a director of some union, it's like, oh, well, he must work for the government because he's telling me about the job. Or like the guy from the liquor store. It's like, oh, well, if this is a government job, this must be a government official. And so, right, what he says must be true. There's that, even if it's not a government person, like there's that belief of this person holds some degree of authority. He must know what he's talking about, and I should believe it. So I think that's really interesting. And I think that's great work that you're doing to help get this information out there. We've got the website in the comments if anyone wants to check it out. But do you want to go ahead and give an extra little plug to your organization? If anybody wants to help or contribute or support the organization, is there anything they can do?
Yeah, for sure. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. Of course, we accept donations from anybody. I'd say the folks who I really want to reach here is anybody who has been hurt by a public sector union, anyone who is out there trying to opt out and just is having a hard time understanding the contract or understanding what their rights are. Or if you have a friend who's a teacher or a public sector employee who might just need a little extra help, what we do for free. We have experts on staff because we really believe this is important, who would be able to go through your contract, help you out, and get you the information you need to make the informed decision that's right for you and for your family. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. We all want what's best for our friends, our neighbors, our family, and making sure that folks are able to make an informed choice. We're still waiting on that viral moment. I'm hoping this show is it, right? Let's get this to 100 million people so people can learn about their rights. But until then, it's going to be word of mouth. It's going to be having honest conversations because it's a complex topic. And that means that it requires that personal human touch to get out there and make sure that we're doing what we need to make sure our people are taken care of. Awesome. So anyone who's got a union contract can just give you a call and get some advice on it,
or get some.
If we can't take care of it, one of the things that we're really good at is recognizing, for example, like we're not a law firm, but when we recognize there's a legal issue, we will refer them to a free legal help organization that can help out. So if we can't help, we'll do everything we can to make sure that we're pointing you in the right direction.
Right. That's really awesome, because I know that's one of the things that is the most intimidating to anyone when you're reading a contract and it's written in legalese and you're like, what the hell does this even mean? And you're trying to figure out, do I sign it or not? And then, your person of authority is just saying, yeah. Oh no, it's cool. It's standard. Everybody signs it. Yeah, it's fine. And you're just like, okay, don't do that, because, the devil's in the details, in the fine print. So that's really amazing to have somebody that you can call and ask for advice on that stuff. And that's also, that creates a great opportunity for you to find out where all the little scams are and help uncover and put a light on all this stuff.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Anytime that someone's telling you, hey, don't worry about it, just sign it, we'll figure out the
worry
detail.
about it.
That's a red flag. Give us a call and make sure that you get another set of eyes on what you're looking at, for sure.
Awesome. All right, Connor, thank you so much for joining me. This has been an awesome show. Again, if you're watching this, if you like what you heard, even if you didn't, make sure to share this, invite your friends, post it, repost it on Twitter, retweet, do all that kind of cool stuff. Let's get this information out there. I think it's super important. This is how we change the world. This is how we inform people. This is how we get people to make smarter decisions and to protect themselves against all kinds of scams, government or not. And thanks for listening. Taxation is Theft. I'll see you guys next time.